Do it yourself sustainable phone holder from old clothes. In today's video, I'll show you how to make a sustainable phone holder at home using old clothes. Instead of throwing away old clothes, we can repurpose them to make something useful. You will require a sewing machine to make this sustainable phone holder and some basic sewing skills. You could try sewing by hand, but it may take longer and require more effort. To make this sustainable phone holder, you will need a few simple materials: an old cloth, scissors to cut the cloth to size, a pencil or a pen to mark your measurements, and some sewing pins or clips to hold the cloth together. Alright, let's dive right in and get started on this project. Firstly, you'll need an old cloth with the measurements shown in the video. It should be an old cloth with 5 inches by 12.5 inches or 13 centimeters by 32 centimeters in length if you prefer metric. Now it is important to find the wrong side of the cloth. This is usually the side that looks less polished or finished compared to the right side. Once you have identified the wrong side, it's time to fold the cloth in half on the right side. Make sure the edges are aligned perfectly and then use your hands to smooth out any wrinkles or bumps on the cloth. Now take some sewing clips or pins and clip the ends of the cloth to secure it in place. Measure 1 inch from the bottom of the cloth on one side and mark it with a pen or pencil. As demonstrated in the video tutorial, sew one of the longer sides of the cloth entirely. Next, stitch the other longer side of the cloth, leaving 1 inch from the bottom as shown in the video. Once you have completed sewing both sides of the fabric, it's time to turn the cloth inside out so that the right side of the fabric is facing outwards. You can do this by reaching into the open end of the cloth pouch and pulling it through the opening so that the entire pouch is now turned right side out. Once you turn the cloth, you will notice a small hole on one side at the bottom. Do not worry, this is the 1 inch gap we intentionally left while sewing. Before proceeding to next step, you may choose to iron the cloth to make it look neat and flat. Now it's time to measure again, and this time we have to draw two straight lines on the right side of the fabric. Draw a straight line leaving 1 inch from the bottom. Let's draw the second line now. Leave a gap of ½ inch from the previous line drawn as shown in the video. Now that we have drawn the two lines, it's time to sew them. Make sure to backstitch at the beginning and end of each line to secure the stitching. This will create two separate compartments within the pouch. Now that you have finished sewing the lines, it's time to prepare the stuffing for the phone holder using old clothes. You can use any old fabric or clothing that you have lying around as long as it's clean and in good condition. Start by cutting the fabric into small pieces. You will need enough stuffing to fill the phone holder, but be careful not to overstuff it or it will become too bulky. Now that we have the pouch prepared, it's time to stuff it with old clothes to make it sturdy enough to hold your phone. Start by taking the bigger pouch and gently stuffing it with small pieces of old clothes, making sure to fill it up evenly. You want to make sure that it's not too tight or too loose, but just right. Keep adding more clothes until you have reached the desired level of firmness. Use a long, thin tool like a chopstick or a knitting needle to push the stuffing all the way to the end, making sure it's evenly distributed throughout the holder. Don't forget to stuff the corners and edges well, as this will help the phone holder maintain its shape. When stuffing the bigger pouch, make sure not to overfill it with old clothes. Leave some space as you will need to sew it to secure the stuffings in place. Before we start sewing, it is important to fold the cloth properly. Fold the stitched ends of the cloth to make a triangle shape as shown in the video. Once you have folded the cloth at the ends to make a triangle shape, it's important to secure them in place. Kindly note that basic sewing skills are required to make this phone holder, including the ability to thread a needle, sew straight lines, and using a sewing machine. However, with practice and patience, even beginners can learn to make this phone holder. You can use sewing clips or pins to hold the fabric together and prevent it from unfolding during sewing. Next, we will fill the bottom part of the phone holder with fabric scraps. This will add more stability to the holder. Stuff the scraps in gently and make sure not to overfill it. Use a long, thin tool like a pencil, chopstick, or a knitting needle to push the stuffings all the way to the end, making sure it's evenly distributed throughout the bottom of the phone holder. To secure the ends of the bottom stuffing, do an invisible hand stitch. You need basic sewing skills and basic hand stitching techniques in order to make this phone holder. Now that we have stitched the bottom part, it's time to use a sewing machine to stitch the ends of the bigger side of the pouch. As the pouch is stuffed with fabric scraps, it's best to use a zipper foot while stitching the ends with a sewing machine. This is a crucial step that requires patience. Take your time and sew slowly to ensure that the stitches are neat and even. And your sustainable phone holder made with fabric scraps is now ready to use. It's a great way to reduce waste and repurpose old clothes. Before we wrap up, let's take a moment to think about the impact of textile waste on the environment. Did you know that the fashion industry is one of the largest polluters in the world? Textile waste is a significant contributor to this problem, with millions of tons of fabric scraps, unsold clothing, and other textile waste ending up in landfills every year. By creating a sustainable phone holder with fabric scraps, we are taking small steps towards reducing this waste. But we can all do more. Limiting our fashion waste and purchasing is a crucial part of protecting the environment. We can reduce our textile waste by choosing high quality, timeless pieces that we all wear for years to come and by repurposing or donating clothing instead of throwing it away. So, next time you are tempted by fast fashion or feel like throwing away old clothes, remember the impact it has on the planet. By making conscious choices, we can all make a difference.